Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to another episode of Justice for All Now. I'm your host, Hannah Zubairi, and you're watching us on Muslim Network TV. You can watch Muslim Network TV 24/7 on Galaxy 19 satellite, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. Today I have two extremely special guests with me. And the reason why they're special is because they're from my neighborhood, from my state, and from my former county. And the topic that they're going to be bringing up today is extremely close to my heart, because this is something that is representation and how Muslims at the grassroots level need and are raising up their voices and holding their county officials accountable, their local city officials accountable, and what more needs to be done in this area. So today we're going to be talking to two activists from Montgomery County, Maryland, Tasnuva Khan and Ilhan Kagri. Assalamu alaikum, Tasnuva and Ilhan. I would, usually I give a whole bio and tell the audience about my guests, but today I really want to let you guys share about yourselves. I know both of you have dynamic careers that you both are, and so involved with on a day-to-day basis, but yet you have both taken up the cause of Muslims in your locality, and really made that a part of your everyday life, and which is so empowering, because this is exactly what we want people to learn, and we talk about this on the show a lot, is that you do not have to be some sort of lawyer or gone to public policy school or anything of that sort to be an activist and to be able to speak for your people. So thank you so much. So Tasnuva, take it away.
Thank you. So I am originally from New York. I moved to Maryland about 11 years ago and have made Montgomery County my home. By profession, I'm a clinical staff pharmacist at a local area hospital. And I have 3 children growing up here in the county. And so for me, I had this this inkling that I need to be more politically active, because as my children are growing up in this county, I feel it's very important as Muslims to be active, to be role models for our kids as they're growing up, and also ensure that they're growing up in a county that is going to respect them, respect their faith, and also they'll have a strong connection as a community member.
Thank you. And Dr. Ilhan.
So I came out of academia. I have lived in Montgomery County for the last 50 years or so. And I'm giving you my age here. I raised my children here in Montgomery County. I have grandchildren. I have 5 children and 9 grandchildren. So big family. We're very proud to be American Muslims. We're proud to be Marylanders. And after leaving academia, I decided to work more in terms of activism or in terms of advocacy. I joined the Muslim Public Affairs Council and was the Senior Program Fellow for Religious Liberty in Washington, D.C. And I think that there were a number of national Muslim organizations that did a tremendous job at representing the voice and the rights of American Muslims. However, when Trump came into the presidency, this sort of engagement with the sort of federal level fell through. It just seemed to be almost a waste of time for me. And I started looking more at the local level, and particularly in the county. And there were a lot of things that could happen within the county. And what moved me to really become active at a very, very local level was that a neighbor of mine, an African-American middle-aged man, was taking a walk in his own neighborhood, my neighbor, in broad daylight. There was a policeman on another called for something else in the neighborhood and decided to follow this man. And this turned really ugly. And he ended up shooting this man several times and was killed. His name is Robert White. And this was almost just a little over 2 years ago. And this really impacted me, that there are people in my neighborhood in broad daylight being killed by police officers for no other reason except the fact that he was Black. And of course, very importantly, the police officer was found not guilty. It was considered justifiable homicide, which is what happens when a police officer shoots a man of color or a person of color. So this became very, very important to me. And I helped with many other people. We were one of the founders of an organization called the Silver Spring Justice Coalition, which has become very, very strong right now. And since Trump, there have been a number of organizations around Montgomery County, especially down county near Washington, D.C., that are, pushing for, preserving our democracy, for bringing back equality and social justice. And obviously, they want to make sure that they represent the voice of the immigrant, the voice of the Muslim, the voices of people of color. And out of that, obviously, we live in the county, and so we get, Muslim voices as well, who are part of this big movement to say we need to be at the forefront of activism locally.
And what I have noticed is when Muslims start getting involved, and I remember this going back pre-Trump and during the elections, and a lot of times, honestly, as a Muslim reporter, this was something I worked for the local Muslim newspaper. And this was something I found is there were often no other Muslims around. And I'd be at an event and I was supposed to cover it, but I became that Muslim voice there. And so that is, this happened like all through 2012 onwards, like many times. But as with the election of President Donald Trump, one thing that I did notice is what we have been saying over and over again at the grassroots level was we need more Muslim people to be just showing up, just show up. And this was a struggle, but things have changed, and watching and documenting that change has been phenomenal. And I would like to get your comments on that change, what you have seen pre-Donald Trump and post-Donald Trump on Muslim activism in Montgomery County.
Yeah, so I would say, for myself, I think it was leading to the 2016 election where I was getting more involved, more politically involved, et cetera, working on campaigns, and then when we received the news that Donald Trump would be our next president, it was, of course, devastating. But I think what it did is it really just gave us the fire that we need to be very active in our community and uphold the voices and make sure that we are talking to the politicians, talking to and actually collaborating, building coalitions with other local activist groups, joining forces because it was almost like that moment where we just needed to all connect with one another because together our voices would be stronger. And so I think that since 2016, in the last couple of years, we've really built a lot of coalitions with different diverse communities throughout Montgomery County. And we have our local leaders from our masajids, our Islamic centers, et cetera. But the activism, the grassroots activism that I believe that Ilhan and I and other members of our group represent is basically coming down to coalition building and just uplifting the voices that are otherwise lost at the table because sometimes we don't have that seat at the table.
Ilhan.
Well, one of the things that I found really interesting is there's an organization in Tacoma Park, which is called Tacoma Park Mobilization. And one of the things, whenever they saw me, they said, "Oh my goodness, a Muslim, we need to have you participate on this committee and that committee." And that was really interesting to me as I go, why am I the only Muslim that you're kind of grabbing hold to? And they would say it's really, really hard to get Muslims involved in this kind of activism. Muslims are very involved within their masajid. Obviously, they're involved at the school level. They do a really good job. It's not like they're sitting at home. But in terms of, I think this kind of activism is a new thing for Muslims. And maybe not the older people, but the younger people are starting to get more and more involved. But again, it's a new thing. People like Tasnuva, I think you're seeing, we're still a pretty small band. We don't have, hundreds of Muslims behind us, where there are a lot, hundreds of Muslims who are aware, hundreds of young Muslims who, feel the same way we do, are definitely, on the side of social justice and equality and those kinds of issues which impact all Muslims. But being able to actually put yourself out there, or feeling that you must put yourself out there during this time, I think is still, fairly new in Montgomery County for the Muslim population. And if I could just, take the time now, I don't know how many people are watching this throughout the country, but I urge everybody to really get involved. This is the time that people need to get involved at the local level. This is where it counts. Obviously, everybody should vote. That's not even an issue. But aside from voting, it's good to know what's happening. It's good to understand why people take the positions they do. There's an issue of, for example, SROs. These are called school resource officers, and basically it's police in the schools. Now, who doesn't want these? The Black community do not want police in the schools. Who does want these? Obviously, white people want them, and the Muslim population by and large say, yeah, what's wrong with having, police in the schools? Well, first of all, these are new. Lots of you guys, I went to schools, there were no police in the schools. There may have been, security people, or you can dial 911 and the police show up. But when police are there, police tend to criminalize, everything becomes criminalized very quickly, and it leads to the school to prison pipeline. So there's dissonance here. We're not listening to the voices of people who are affected. We're not listening to Black people who are saying, it is bad for our community. It is bad for us. And I feel really sad that we're not listening to the people who are really affected. And they're part of our community. We have plenty of people who are, people of color. We have, obviously African Americans, African Muslims, and people of color who, are not considered white in this country, who are impacted. And yet we have this sort of, I don't know, this not quite understanding of how this affects our community. And so it's really important, I think, for everybody to listen more.
I think that's the issue in Montgomery County is a lot of Muslims work for the government. The other issue is it's a predominantly, it's a pretty wealthy county compared to the rest of Maryland. And what you just said, we don't consider Black issues Muslim issues, even though a quarter of our population is Black, especially African Americans who, are plenty in Montgomery County. They're not in seats of leadership in our masajid. They're not in seats of leadership in our organizations. And this is why their voices aren't heard. Just like Muslims feel like when we talk about our myth not being on the table, we also have to take a deeper look at ourselves, that we're not putting people who are impacted by these policies on the table either. And need to make more. And I think that's when that change will come, where now you're teaching people to advocate for themselves who are most impacted by these policies. And I think the other problem with Montgomery County is always seen as the most diverse county. Like there's a brand, right? And you don't hurt that brand. So that is another issue, which I'm so glad in the coming years, like it just really opens up. The country's changing, and Montgomery County is going to change too. And it's really exciting to see those changes, to see like the kids who grew up in these public schools are now at those positions where now they want to get involved, and they can. Like, we just need to find those pathways. And that's what I wanted to ask you guys. How are you intending to open up? Like, let's talk a little bit about this initiative that you both have started or are getting off the ground or putting together, of putting Muslim voices in places where they need to be heard. And what is the long-term plan on getting people from within the community to be a part of that, and sort of funneling them in. So love to hear about that.
Okay, so what we did was we started with a meeting with our County Executive Mark Elrich of Montgomery County, and that was back in December. Of course, there were, mostly at that meeting, community activists. There were some, masjid leaders, et cetera, that were at that meeting. But we wanted to talk to our county executive one-on-one and say, if you want to connect with the Muslim community and you want to hear what issues we're having as county residents, you need to connect with us directly. And you have to also understand that, of course, we have, we have our, the leaders of our mosques, our Islamic centers, et cetera, but there's also community activists, and he himself was a community activist. So for that, we did have that connection where he understood that, a lot of coalition building, et cetera, and even just organizing our communities. It starts with local grassroots activists that, again, are representatives of the community, and so, we asked for a direct line of communication with him, and which he agreed to at that meeting. So we had a couple of asks, and we would follow up. But one of the asks was this recent racial equity, social justice community advisory group that was put into law to be created at the county level. And of course, there was a process for it. We asked that because 10% of the of Montgomery County, at least 10%. We're giving an arbitrary number.
And how do we come to that number? It's because we have these gigantic mosques,
yeah.
And during Eid Salah, we can count how many people are there.
How many thousands of people are there, exactly. So, and so we asked that at least one member of that group is Muslim, because we have one of the things is 20% of Muslim Americans in general are African American or Black, right? And so they themselves have a lot of, come across a lot of issues in regards to racial injustice and inequities. And also as Muslims, we have these social justice issues because of our faith, because of how we dress, because of how we practice our faith visibly, in front of others. And so we wanted to have that representation. And he actually agreed with us. And he said at that meeting that, I can agree to that. Please send us, your endorsements. Make sure that it's someone or a group of people who are definitely connected throughout the county. And so we did. And the only thing—
I want to ask you one thing here, Nova. And the reason for this, when you say that there's a need for a voice at the social justice table for Muslims, is because Montgomery County masajid have been targeted with hate crimes. Muslim children have been bullied. And these are all like documented incidents, and over the course of the past 5-6 years, increasing surveillance, increasing of mosques, of policing of our children. The fact that Montgomery County model, which is a counter-violent extremism program, was started and found in Montgomery County and has been exported throughout the country, is something that should be just something, a grave concern. So all of your asks were coming from a place of incidents that had actually occurred and not just anecdotal things. These were issues that have been brought up by the community over and over again. So I just wanted to make that, and any comment on that from either one of you before you go on.
Well, and also the kind of training that police get. So they're still receiving counterterrorism training, and everybody knows that counterterrorism training specifically targets Muslims, American Muslims. They're not talking about the white nationalists or the white supremacists who are the actual terrorists in this country and who actually commit the vast majority of terrorist crimes and murders and, violent attacks in this country. So, that's another thing that our group is very much involved with, is this idea of, picking out Muslims as, saying, well, we need to get counterterrorism training for our police force, which, is not geared towards stopping white nationalism. They might say that, but that's not the kind of training that they're receiving. So yes, Hannah, you're absolutely right that, it didn't come out of nowhere. There has been surveillance, there have been incidents. And even after Trump, there's been more and more, attacks on, churches that are Hispanic churches. There have been banners taken down and vandalism of churches that are, traditionally Black churches, or if there's a Black Lives Matter banner. There's been mosques, obviously, that have been vandalized, or Muslim women pushed or, somehow attacked. And just to give you an anecdote, look, it's always interesting to me that the trauma that happens to people is not just to the victims. So my son's family lives in a very nice neighborhood, and you'll know it right off Colesville Road near Silver Spring. Lovely, lovely lawns, lovely houses. And one day my son was his wife wears hijab, his daughter wears hijab. And one day my son is driving out of the neighborhood, and his Christian and Jewish neighbors, stop him. And he's like, hello, how's everybody? And they said, we just wanted to tell you that you don't need to worry. And he's thinking, I wasn't worried, but what do I not need to worry about? And they said, we're going to protect you. If anything should happen, we formed, a neighborhood sort of protection group, and we're going to protect you and your family. And, my son, what could he say? Oh, thank you so much. But when he came to my house, he said, should I be worried? Because I wasn't worried. Mm-hmm. But look what's happening to the Christians and the Jews in the neighborhood. They're thinking, oh my gosh, we have this Muslim family, this obviously Muslim family, and we need to protect them from some violent attack. I mean, that just shows that there's, a lot of people are being impacted by this, sort of singling out of, these minorities that you can victimize for violence, right? And I think that that's really what we need to look at, is that the sort of issues that involve all of us, nobody really escapes those kinds of issues.
Exactly.
So let's finish.
Yes, please continue.
Right. So, and it's exactly what Ilhan had mentioned. There's in terms of like the schools, there's a lot of these things that have been going on for against the Muslim community in Montgomery County. And one of the reasons why we elected County Executive Mark Elridge is because he agreed with us. Mm-hmm. And he said that he would definitely want to have a stop to any of those programs. And he was aware of those programs, and he was vehemently against all of it. Mm-hmm. We felt that County Executive Mark Elridge, is an advocate for the Muslim community. So, and at the same time, we want that representation, and we also want to be able to voice our concerns with those issues, right? And who better than a Muslim member of the community of Montgomery County to be able to express those concerns. And so we mobilized, we put in our endorsements, et cetera. Of course, we had COVID hit, and then, things were delayed. But once the members were announced, there was not one Muslim member of our community that was placed on that advisory committee.
Were you surprised?
I think it was mixed feelings, because the way it just came out, it was just like we were surprised that the announcement was already made, and that everything was all said and done, and nothing was actually we weren't even contacted beforehand or any of that. So I think it was a bit of a surprise. Ilhan?
Well, that's the thing, is that we were in we were engaging with the county executive, right? And we had actually said, okay, we're a group of people that want to engage with you. We support you. We don't agree 100%, but overall, you have a good heart. You come from a good place, and so we want to work with you, and we want to be there for you, and we know that you are going to support us in our needs as well. And so, with all of that engagement, I think we were disappointed that there was no outreach. There was nothing back. And we even, we had sent we had met with the county executive in November, and we had sent follow-up emails saying, hey, this is one of the things that you agreed to. We still want to make sure what's going on with this. We want to make sure that we're engaging. We want to make sure that our voices are heard. And actually, that's where our name came from, is because we kept talking about, we had this group of activists and we didn't have a name yet. And we said, okay, what should we call ourselves? And there were all these names. We kept talking about, no, we have to make sure that Muslim voices are heard. We have to make sure that, the county hears Muslim voices. And so that's how we got the name of the group, is, Muslim Voices. Voices in plural, because we don't want to be a homogenous group. We want to make sure that there's a lot of different kinds of Muslims around, different colors of Muslims around, and different ethnicities. And we want to make sure that all of their voices and their views and their concerns are represented. So I think that's where the disappointment came, is that at a point where we were increasing our engagement, we were not reached out to say, hey, what's happening here? This is what's going on. We hope you don't mind. These are the issues we're having. These are what we're considering in terms of the county council. This new commission. And so it was a disappointment. It was definitely a disappointment. And so we decided to, write a letter saying we are disappointed. We still want to have a voice at the table, whether it's through this commission or some other way. We want to make sure that Muslim voices are heard, our concerns are heard. And it created a buzz. Not only did it create a buzz amongst, our allies, we had people, writing in, supporting, we had groups supporting us. And initially, you put something out there and you're very hopeful, but, I guess everybody's prepared to take sort of, okay, well, we've done this. And we had a lot more support than at least I anticipated. And when we started, talking to people in the county council, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, you started a petition.
Right, we started a petition, exactly. Well, we had signatories from our group, and then we just opened it up to anybody else who wanted to sign on. And, many of us are active in other organizations. If you ask Tasnuva, she's involved in a number of organizations. I can give you a number of organizations that I'm involved in. And we just sort of sent it out in a very low-key way that, hey, we have this petition. And the members of those groups started signing in, and actually Tacoma Park Mobilization, sent a group letter in. So then we got word back from the county council saying, the council members were hearing about this. We had actually emailed them as well, but there had been a buzz. And okay, so there's this buzz, but we still, Tasnuva, have not heard back, right? We keep getting, I actually talked to Mark Elrich's assistant, and he was supposed to, here, it's up on the screen right now, is this petition that was started. But Mark Elrich's assistant told a number of people that, we were going to be getting a response from Mark any day now. Well, any day now has now become
several weeks,
almost 2 weeks. Yes, right. So we're not getting a response back. But here's the good news is that it is making a buzz. They are talking about it. They are thinking about how to engage, and it is new. I'm a little bit more optimistic, I think, than many other people. I see a progression in Mark, both in terms of understanding Black issues, even though he was an activist, right? He's a white person living in pretty much white neighborhoods. And I think this idea of understanding what Black people go through in terms of over-policing and violence from police was new to him. And he was open to it, but I think he had learning to do. And the same thing with the Muslim community. I have seen sort of changes in him in terms of understanding, hey, this is a community that has needs, concerns that are legitimate, as you pointed out, Hina. And when we point them out to him, he agrees, even at the meeting that we had, and I think Tasnuva will agree to this, he was thinking, okay, yes, clearly I'm on board with this, or yes, clearly I'm on board with this. So this is not somebody we're dealing with that is not progressive to start with, right? So that's good for us. but that doesn't mean that we should remove his feet from the fire. And I think that we still need to keep pushing. And we're grateful for all of the help we get in sort of petitioning the county executive and the county council and letting them know that we do have support behind us.
And this is another step in organizing. So now all these people who signed this petition, these are people who are supporters. So now they're all organized behind the Muslim Voice. And these are all grassroots people. This is not an organization, but these are like many people from different parts who are tied to the county. Either they live or worship there, or work there. And that's really important, to have that sort of organizing behind a cause. And this something brings, I was, when I first saw it, I was dismayed because I've talked to Mark myself. He'd come to our mosques, we'd give him tours. He's spoken at gatherings that we've been at. And I just thought it would be better. You expect, because this isn't on the national stage. We say this too, when the progressives come into power, it will be better. But this is a learning process that you have to keep the issues alive. Number one, you have to keep educating and you have to stay involved. You cannot let other people, no one is going to be as passionate about your causes or how you're being impacted as you are. But another thing that's brought this to, after the dismay was like, okay, there is Islamophobia and anti-Muslim bigotry in liberal circles too. And we have to acknowledge it. We have to talk about it. We have to dismantle it. You're seeing it on the presidential stage right now with, just whatever has transpired. And I feel like the Democrats take Muslim votes for granted because they feel like, oh, why would they go to Trump or any of the Republican candidates? So therefore, we make good posters. We make good props, but we're tokenized in a lot of ways. And this is exactly what this is about, is how do you have no representation from 10% of your county when this is a directly impacted group, and no reason is given. So what's next? What are you guys planning next? What is next for the community? What would you like the community to do?
So before we get to that, Tasnova, can I just pick up something? There's two things that Hannah said that I just want to pick up on, and then you can go ahead and answer the question. One of the things that you said is the grassroots, and Tasnova, you use that too. This grassroots activism for Muslims, I think, is really, really important. It's not coming out of the masajid. And one of the problems with the masajid is very often there's a bureaucracy. And the bureaucracy slows things down and sometimes even blocks things from happening because people do things old school sometimes within the sort of bureaucracy of the masajid. But when you have a grassroots, sort of organization, one, it's much more efficient. It's more fluid, it's more vibrant, it's more dynamic, and it's also more inclusive. So we are including Muslims who maybe do not belong to a single masjid, right? Our masjids, we have their problems, right? We have, Arab masjids and, Desi masjids and Turkish masjids and whatever. And some people, are still looking for a home among those masjids. So we have Muslims who, really feel they're Muslim but can't find a home in a particular masjid, and we want to include their voices as well. So this idea of being a grassroots movement is really, really important. And again, for those people that are not in Montgomery County, I encourage you to get involved at that level, in your own communities. The second thing is this: I have seen at the larger masjids, I attended, I was going to some meetings right before the 2016 election, and they were having meetings about voting. And I was in the back and I was sitting with the young people, these are 20-year-olds. They weren't even registered to vote. They were not even registered to vote. And so it's so important because the vote is going to be very close. It's going to be very close for the local elections. It's going to be very close for the congressional seats. It's going to be close for the presidential election. And your vote will matter. It will definitely matter. So if you're not registered to vote, please register to vote and get your aunties and your uncles and your friends and whatever. And I mean, be rude if you have to, be whatever if you have to, but definitely register to vote and get people to vote. It's so important. The last election, the Muslim votes would have made a difference in Michigan. And in Virginia, people win elections in Virginia by 50 votes, by 100 votes. It makes a difference. There are, hundreds of thousands of Muslims in Virginia. I don't know if I have that number to correct, but a large number of Muslims in Virginia, they can sway an election. And so Enrage actually puts out, the states where the Muslim vote, if it comes as a block, we can just sway elections. So it's very, very important to do that. So just reminding those things, please register to vote, and please vote, and get your aunties and uncles and children, whatever, to vote. And the second thing is, get involved at the grassroots level. So Tasnuva.
Yes, and I definitely agree that the Muslim vote definitely will sway elections, and it right now it will do that in Michigan right now, and we need Michigan to win, right? We need Minnesota. In fact, it was just 2% that it went Democratic, right? And we know how many Muslims live in Minnesota, Virginia, Florida, Texas, etc. So on the national level, yes, but even on the local level, Hina, you will recall, right, when our county executive won the primary. You were the one who told 80 aunties to go and vote for him, and he won by a very slim margin.
Very slim margin.
It was a very crowded primary, and he won in that slim margin. And you definitely took some credit for getting those 80 aunties, those Muslim aunties, to go and vote.
I don't know too. It was those 80 Muslim aunties who got you.
Look at that! I just want to repeat that. 80. We're talking 80. She got 80 aunties to vote, and she swung the election. And we have a progressive county executive. It could have gone the other way. It could have gone the other way. Before this county executive, we could not meet, Muslims could not meet with the county executive without going through a liaison person, a non-Muslim liaison person. In order to get through, you had to go through a channel of a non-Muslim liaison person. Imagine that. And now we can say, you know what, this is nonsense. We're not going through a liaison person. We can speak for ourselves. And we are. And we do have his ear. We can schedule meetings with him. We can call up his assistant. We can call up the county council members. We do have inroads to these people. And I think that, we should count those as small, sort of success stories, right? And so the next step, Tasnuva, what's our next step moving on?
So again, the next step, I just want to kind of say this straight, is that we are basically holding all of our county representatives, accountable. And it's not enough to attend our iftars. It's not enough to come and visit our masjids, have tours. That's not enough anymore, and be part of like photo ops, etc. It means that you take our issues, you listen to them, you hear our grievances, you hear our concerns, and you actually work with us to come up with solutions. And so what we're trying to do now is, with Muslim Voices, is basically have a name for our, grassroots organization, and allow as many Muslims within the county, throughout Maryland, to join us. And one of the things that we're actually talking about is connecting with other communities. So I'm originally from New York, and Muslims for Progress is another grassroots organized community in New York City, who actually helped, with AOC's campaign and with Jamal Bowman's campaign and all these progressives that are winning. That's an organization that's been at the forefront of helping these progressives. And so we want to connect with groups like that, and all throughout the country. I ran as a delegate, for Maryland, and I am connected to a lot of Muslim delegates throughout the country within the Democratic Party. And so there's all these different groups. And I think that, having some kind of vehicle for all of us to connect and then learn from, and then also get involved and get the support, right? I think that's basically what we're trying to achieve. And, we hope that others will support us in that effort.
That's excellent. I want to ask you both a question. So one of the things that I've noticed, even when, I'm like a people person. So one of the people I organized in Prince George's County, the people, it's really like grassroots, like bus stops and sidewalk cafes, that sort of stuff. And that may be a little bit, again, Montgomery County is a little different. The flavor's a little different. The people are a little different. One of the things that I've seen is actually two things. One is gatekeeping. So there often becomes this, and there's a tendency, even in the Muslim community and elsewhere, definitely, but even in the Muslim community, to gatekeep who gets to speak, who gets to lead, who gets to be on the table, who gets first dibs on finding out what the next action is. All of that, right? So how will you plan on addressing this? So this is like a truly people powered organization or collective. So that's one question that I really want to ask both of you, because you're in the formative stage and we need to learn from mistakes that have been made previously. I mean, Muslims have a 500 years plus history in this country. Institutionally, we're about 80 years, 90 years old. And so we have a lot of learning to do. But what I'm seeing this with the younger folks, they have mashallah, I am just so proud of our youth. They don't have some of these hang-ups that many of us, or I know my generation or the generation before us had. And some of these walls of racism and ethnocentricity and all of that, that's not their struggle. That was maybe our struggle, but that's not their struggle. So that's something. So I'd love to hear you guys' point of view on gatekeeping. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about, so there's national, a lot of national Muslim organizations that are doing a lot of work. To reiterate, as we're winding down the hour, the power and things that locals can accomplish, and why, local politics is so important. What sort of things, like you're talking to a Muslim audience who are listening to you, who want to, perhaps just maybe a grandma. I'm telling you, getting CVE out of Montgomery County was the work of Girl Scout moms. 100%. I mean, not even kidding you. It was those mothers who heard their young Girl Scouts talk about it, a fear for their friends who were in public school, who were being targeted by this program, that spurred that on, and got people together and set up forums, brought experts in, all of those things. But that happened at a very grassroots level. So those are two things that I want to talk about as we wind down the hour.
Right. So in terms of the issues, and you mentioned the CVE, I think we have to continue as a group. We're still doing the research needed to make sure that our county isn't enabling those kinds of programs, whether or not they exist under different names and they continue to exist, or if they are going to be implemented, in whatever part of our government. So that's one of the things that we do have, members of our organization who are supporting efforts to make sure that that's one of the, issues that we're constantly, researching and trying to prevent from happening again, or from continuing to happen. And then I think I'm sorry, your other question is
gatekeeping.
Do you want me to talk on that? Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's the difference between the masajid and the grassroots level organizing. So even in terms of our petitions and other things that we've done earlier with different kinds of activities that we've done, our particular group has done, to get the masjid to buy into, we had to speak to this person or that person who had to get approval from this person, or the board needed to sign on and the board didn't meet that regularly, or they had to wait till the next board meeting. So again, there was this, this sort of inability for rapid response that you don't have at the grassroots level. The other thing is that people who are active at the grassroots level, they will learn from other organizations who are very, very good at listening. These other organizations say it's not about us, it's about representing other people. And how can we represent people's rights if we don't listen to what the issues are with them? So I think that one of the good things, at least what I've seen from the, various people that have come in, they're very, very good. They're not coming in with just their own agenda. I'm not coming in with just my own agenda. And Tasnuva definitely is not coming in with just her own agenda, although she is thinking about her children, because she is, a Muslim mom with Muslim children of color in a Montgomery County school system, right? So yes, she has those issues, but she's saying, okay, you know what? There are a lot of other issues too. And I need to make sure to listen to those, because maybe that's not my issue, but that's an issue for them, and I need to represent them if I'm able to do that. So those, the idea of gatekeeping, I think, is really sort of resolved at the grassroots level if you learn from other activist groups who have been around for a while and who are really, really good at, listening, incorporating people's ideas. And then the final thing is, to give structure to your meetings. One of the things that we discovered as a group is that if we, again, learn from other organizations who, when they take meetings with the county executive or the county council members or the delegates at the state level or the senators at the state level, that we come in with an agenda, that we're really clear on what we're going to say, that the people, are identified beforehand to speak about the issues, that we don't have this, everybody just speak about any old topic, that we're really sort of agenda driven. And that when we have a particular meeting, we have a purpose for having that meeting, and we come away with something from that meeting. And I think that's really sort of strengthened our hand, because, if you go in and you're unprepared, everybody just says something. And even though our views might be good views, if they're not coherent, you can walk away with nothing, right? But if they're really focused and centered and very professional looking, because that's what happens is we start looking very professional, right? Then we can walk away with something. We can then, this meeting, for example, we had in November, we can actually come back and say, these were our points. This is what you said. This is what you agreed to. We're holding you to this, again, because it was very organized. It was very tight, right? So it wasn't about gatekeeping. It was about being agenda driven, focused, and being really clear on what you want at a particular time. And the reason, Hannah, that I'm taking time for this is because you said there's a larger audience and these people might be organizing within their own communities, which I hope they are. But to be very clear that when you have these kinds of meetings, you start out with an agenda, you start out with a chairperson, you start out with who's going to say what, and how you're going to do that. And you will get much more than just this sort of free for all. We're going to meet and we're just going to all air our laundry, so to speak, right? So
and then giving the voices that are often not heard, exactly like you were saying, the ability to speak. So because a lot of times in more conventional organizations, it's typically people who have the power already. Maybe they are leads of organizations or mosques, and then they are representing those folks, and so they get to speak. But the people who are directly impacted, the family who might have been bullied, or the sister whose hijab might have been pulled off, or whoever it was, right, they don't get to speak for themselves. And that's the power of people. Power is that those people are finally centered, and their voices are centered, and and the issues are then, those are the issues that are important, not.
And Hannah, that person may not speak up in a free-for-all kind of meeting, but if you have an agenda and you say, okay, item number 6, Sister So-and-so is going to speak about her particular thing, then she does speak up. There's a lot of people who may be in a larger group, don't get a chance, don't, feel that they couldn't step in or whatever. But when it's like that, and you actually, carve out the time for that person, and it's with a purpose, with an aim in mind, like, this is the reason we're meeting. This is what we want when we come out of this meeting. This is what we want to achieve. And these are the points that we're going to use to achieve that. It's really, really important to do that. And you'll find that it's much more effective, right? You can come back and refer to that over and over.
So as we wrap up the hour, there's a petition. We're going to share the link for those of you in the region, in Montgomery County, work there, live there, worship there. Please sign on to this petition and get involved. So how would they want to, if someone lives there, wants to get involved, how are you guys organizing? Is it on WhatsApp? Is it how can they get in touch with you?
Tasnuva is our communications director. So Tasnuva is director of communications. And I don't know, Tasnuva, do you feel okay sharing either your email or whatever with the group? with anybody who may want to contact you?
For right now, because we're still at the very beginning stages of, of really organizing our group into something cohesive. But yes, you can email me. I'll share it. It's Tesnuva. My name is right there at the caption, tesnuva.con@gmail.com. And, we've literally been working off of a WhatsApp group pretty much, but, and some Zoom meetings here and there. But we are, working on solidifying ourselves into something more technologically friendly.
Yeah. That's kind of organizing. Seriously, this is the time where, I mean, it's easy for an auntie to join a WhatsApp group. And then, a lot of our retired brothers and sisters there. I mean, I'm telling you, some of my best Justice for All volunteers are retired brothers and sisters who are not, they might have never done this before in their lives. But now they're seeing what this country is headed towards, and they're concerned about rising fascism overseas, and they want to get involved to stop it and make sure at least their voices are heard somewhere. So thank you so much to both of you for joining in and for being, and we hope someone in the county gets to watch this and watch our voices. We're here, we're listening, we're watching, and we hope that you do better with the Muslim community in Montgomery County. I will, thank you to my audience here. Please join us today. We urge you to call President Trump in for our Save Uyghur campaign. Both Vice President Biden has used terminology that we have been pushing for the past couple of years. Call it a genocide. He called it a genocide. He used the words coming out of the campaign were the largest incarceration since World War II. This is exactly what we've been saying for the past 3 years. Please join us today as we call and tweet at President Trump as he goes into his speech at the RNC, and get involved with stopping this genocide. So we're tweeting under Trump Uyghur genocide. So the hashtag is Trump Uyghur genocide. You'll see it on the bottom of the screen. And please join us today and tomorrow throughout the week until Trump makes this decision. The time is right. The momentum is there. And we need you to make those calls. Call the White House. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.